Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile found...
I'd like to share with you a bizarre series of events. Events involving what I like to call amphibious anomalies that have shocked and terrified businessmen, farmers, and police officers, and remains one of the most intriguing cryptozoological mysteries in the United States. I refer to the intriguing case of the Loveland Frogmen. The story of these unique creatures begins in May of 1955, on a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Little Miami River in Clermont County, Ohio, just on the outskirts of a small town known as Loveland. At approximately 3:30 a.m., an unnamed businessman claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal, quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and observed these creatures for what he estimated to be about 3 minutes. During this time, he noticed that these strange beings stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. Their most distinguishing characteristic, however, was their distinctly frog-like heads, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where hair should have been. Just as the man was about to steal away, one of the creatures suddenly held what the witness could only describe as a wand above his head. The anonymous source further claimed that sparks spewed out of the end of this device. Needless to say, he left post-haste. Thus begins the bizarre legend of the Loveland Frogmen. Now, this tale would be fascinating enough if it ended there, but the 2 most significant encounters in the case, and indeed 2 of the most significant encounters in the annals of cryptozoology, were yet to come. At about 1 a.m. on March 3, 1972, nearly 17 years after the first report, a police officer who understandably chose to remain anonymous was traveling along Riverside Road heading towards Loveland when he saw something that would forever change his life. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly due to the substantial amount of ice on the road when he saw what looked like a dog by the curb. Suddenly, the animal darted in front of the cruiser, forcing the officer to slam on the brakes in order to avoid a potential collision with the creature. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, its headlights fell upon the prone animal. At this point, the officer described something that seems literally too bizarre to be true. In the span of seconds, this crouched, frog-like creature stood on 2 legs, stared back at the policeman, then scrambled over the guardrail and scurried down the embankment, finally disappearing into the Little Miami River. The officer in question described the creature as being 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing approximately 50 to 75 pounds. He also claimed that its skin had a leathery texture and that the animal's features resembled those of a frog or lizard. Another officer investigated the scene later that evening. He saw no sign of the creature, but reported that there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the animal purportedly crossed. The next sighting occurred 2 weeks later when police officer Mark Matthews had an encounter of his own. According to Matthews' report, he was driving into Loveland and he spotted what he believed to be an injured animal lying on the pavement. Matthews climbed out of his cruiser with the intention of removing the carcass from the already ice-slicked road, when the creature abruptly lurched upwards into a crouched position. Taken aback by the frogman's appearance and actions, Matthews unholstered his revolver and took a shot at the creature, which then proceeded to hobble over the side of the road and step over the guardrail, all while keeping a watchful eye on the officer. Matthews' frogman matched the first officer's description down to the last detail, with the exception of a tail, which was absent in earlier reports. In the years which have followed these events, Officer Matthews has reneged somewhat on this tale, He now claims that the animal in question was nothing more than a large reptile, which likely escaped from its owner. He further insists that the only reason he shot at the creature was to help confirm a fellow officer's story, a story which was, of course, being met with predictable skepticism by their superiors. Whether or not Matthew's change of heart was inspired by ridicule or the fading memory of an event from which he was 30 years removed, the fact remains that his own testimony contradicts his later retraction. Later that same year, an anonymous farmer reported sighting 4 bizarre creatures while inspecting his fields, which were located adjacent to the Little Miami River. The farmer claimed that the eyes of the frogmen were large and circular. Their skin was a pale greenish gray, and perhaps most disturbingly, that their mouths were wide and filled with sharp teeth. Thankfully, instead of attacking the poor man, the creatures stayed true to form and made their escape back into the river, from where they have yet to be seen again. Arguably, the most intriguing aspect of this case is the apparent use of a technological device, the sparkling wand, in the earliest reported encounter with these creatures. It has led some investigators to suggest that these creatures may not just be anomalous animals, but intelligent beings, possibly from out of this world. Thank you for listening to the Shadowland radio show. If you're listening on the Blackwater Media YouTube channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You can also listen at blackwatermedia.net and the Blackwater Media Facebook page. I'm Dr. William Lester, and I promise to see each and every one of you again on the flip side.